I'll call this meeting to order of the Legislative Committee, Dunn County Board of Supervisors, Wednesday, December 14th, 2022 at 2:47. We had some technical difficulties. I appreciate everybody's patience, waiting for us to get untangled. First order of business is call the roll.
I believe you have everyone except John Calabrese. Here he is.
And John indicated he'd be at both meetings today, but by Zoom, so. Next order of business, the approval of minutes from November 9th, 2022. What's the board's pleasure?
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion, amendments, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign, motion carried. Next order of business is public comments. And to my knowledge, do we have any? No. No, you're on the agenda, Terry. Say, yeah. I hear or see no public comments. The next order of business is item 5, items placed at the request of the chair. Discussion and direction to staff regarding drafting of a resolution regarding a technical college funding advisory referendum. And that's why Terry is here. I would like to thank Nick for the plethora of information that he gave us. 89 pages. I burned up a bunch of ink on that, I'll tell you. But anyway, appreciate the background. So I guess to cut to the chase, we've had ample time to investigate this, get information collected. And I would like to bring this to a conclusion one way or another today. And I guess I'd like to know the board's pleasure. What do you think? I think we could, I got 3 options here and you can tell me if they're wrong or sick and wrong or whatever. One of them's a referendum. Number 2, we could draft a letter or a resolution adding to our legislative asks. And number 3, we could do nothing. Now, I'll share my opinion, I guess, if it's okay with you. But while this is an important issue, I don't think that we are the appropriate venue for affecting change. I think that would be at the legislative level in Madison. Not that it's not a good idea, but we're not, in my estimation, we're not in a position to influence that change other than to make a recommendation or to have a referendum. I don't care which way we go. I leave it up to whatever the board's pleasure is. And I would entertain any other comments or questions or deathly silence. We hear you. Well, let me ask you what I just said then. Does that make sense?
Those
Yeah.
3 options.
Yeah. So there's our 3 choices. And I want to put this to bed. Number 1 for Terry's benefit and number 2 for our benefit. I think he deserves an answer. And this legislative committee was created just for this reason, for people to bring questions or ideas to us and give them a venue to take it up the ladder. And so I appreciate, and Terry's been a bulldog on this and he's done a lot of research and I appreciate the efforts. So I guess I await the board's guidance and
I think that
supervisor.
if we were to put something on the legislative agenda, that would mean that we as a body or the county board as a body would have to make an opinion on it. If we put it out as a resolution, then we're asking the county citizenry what they think of it. So it kind of depends on who we want involved in that decision-making process. And I don't know, I kind of lean more toward the people having their say more than us deciding something, but I can be open to either or both.
Thank you, Jim. Certainly a valid point, and that is, I mean, we serve the people. I don't disagree with that at all. Is there any other comments or statements that anybody would like to make? Don, Quinn, Supervisor Quinn.
A little different perspective. I guess, to me, I mean, first of all, I think the information really backs up that we got really backs up the doggedness with which Terry has brought this issue to us. I mean, just looking at the proposed expenditures that all came in under 1.5 million, and then the way the process is written to allow anything under that amount to be passed without a referendum was kind of really irritating. But I am a little nervous about us getting into the habit of doing referendums on policy issues as a matter of sort of routine business. You know, it just seems like, where do you stop, and how do you I mean, that's, where do you stop? And this issue seems to me to be fairly complicated, and one that would take some effort to explain and would be difficult for people to go into I know when I went into the booth and voted on the healthcare referendum, even though I'd seen it beforehand, it was difficult to read it. Writing was small, at least in my polling place it was. And I didn't feel, I felt like many people, even though there was a good effort, and John, I want to thank John Calabrese in particular for taking an individual effort to inform people about that referendum. Even so, it felt to me like, you know, it had an outcome, but it didn't really lead to a discussion. And so my inclination, and a little bit different than Jim, would be that I think this is an issue that's worth addressing. I think it is relevant to the county board because it impacts how taxes are levied, and that is sort of a holistic thing for all of us to be part of. But I would rather see it in the form of a resolution to the legislature and maybe to the county's association. That's just my personal preference.
Thank you, Supervisor Quinn. Any other speaking to the situation? Supervisor Kelly? Chairman Kelly.
I guess I lean toward, I think that Terry has been pursuing this doggedly, and I think he's absolutely right that it is an issue that has not been dealt with very well. I tend to lean towards, at least as a first step, having it on our legislative agenda and an ask from the county and passed by the Board of Supervisors rather than leaping straight to referendum. I'm not a huge fan of referendums, non-binding referendums as a whole.
Thank you. Is there any other comments to be made? John Calabrese?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I didn't see in the packet what the question would ask if there was a referendum. And did I miss that? Do we know what the question would be?
No, because what was agendized today was discussion and direction to staff regarding drafting of a resolution regarding a technical college funding advisory referendum. And I guess it was no sense to draft it until they were instructed to draft it. If that makes sense to you, John.
Yeah, no, it does. And I appreciate your words of thanks, Supervisor Quinn. And I asked that question because maybe the health insurance referendum didn't spark a movement or anything, but in my experience going out and talking to people and talking to neighbors and talking to a lot of people on this board, it actually did lead to many really good conversations and lots of perspective changes in so I used to not be in favor of, in general, non-binding advisory referendums, but I've sort of shifted on that a little bit. And that's not to say I would want everything to be a referendum. And so I was so surprised by some of the stuff I've learned about the technical colleges and the stuff that Terry has talked about, that that I think bringing that somehow to the people, that knowledge would really open up a lot of eyes. And I don't know that that's our job to do that. But I think I just don't think that, I don't think it has zero impact if there was a question, but in my mind, it depends how the question would be worded. And so those are my comments.
Very well put. Thank you, Supervisor Calabrese. Mike, do you have something?
I guess I would lean toward what Supervisor Quinn said regarding the complexity of making it so people can easily know what they're voting for. I think even a basic yes and no referendum tends to be more complex on the ballot. I'm not sure I believe that we need to go to a referendum as our first step. We could hopefully go through the process of going up to the counties association on that route. So I would probably lean more that way and try to influence the state politicians to get on board and do something.
Any other comments from any Supervisor Johnson?
Yeah, I would agree totally with Mike on that. I think that's the route to go. That's my feel, so.
Supervisor Headland, do you have a comment?
No, I guess I agree with that too. I would like would like the county association to, for us to get them to support what we feel. And I guess my support, is put out information. And they've got the funds and the I'm going to say expertise of even putting out a magazine every month. I think that there ought to be some information that could be made available to the taxpayers of the state of Wisconsin coming from the county association with just how it's being done. I think I don't know, like you say, a referendum is awfully hard to pass all that information along. And so I guess I would agree. I think I would make motion that we move ahead and put this as part of our legislative agenda, and that we have a discussion both with our legislators at our meeting with them and with the county association.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just a quick clarification. Every year at the WCA meeting, there is a series of resolutions passed by so are you suggesting that we, in addition to the legislative agenda, bring it forward to the WCA to add to their legislative agenda?
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that.
Yep. As a matter of fact, we just had our meeting and we addressed two issues from two different counties. So that's not, that's the way they do things. I want to, I appreciate everybody's what I think is well thought out comments and thoughts regarding this process. I think I don't know how this vote's going to go, but I know what Terry would like. But I think, at least from my point of view, we're seeing a more thoughtful response to questions brought by our taxpayers. And I think in the end, that's who we represent. And so and that's really why we have this committee. you know, to give a venue or an avenue for our taxpayers to bring issues that might be daunting if they would bring them somewhere else. So I appreciate everybody's input. Does anyone else have anything to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not directly speaking to the motion, but would be in favor of moving this up to WCA. I would be very much opposed to an advisory referendum. I don't think even we, and you know, no, I mean, thanks to Nick for the information he's provided, but I don't think even we have a very good understanding of what the complexity of this issue is. And I don't think that we should be bringing it to the voters at this point, but I am fine with moving it on to WCA.
Is there any other discussion regarding the motion?
Can I just state what the motion actually
Yeah. Okay. All right, a motion would be that we pass on to our legislators at our legislative meeting with them, our gathering coming up as part of our legislative agenda to have them look into the, is fairness a good word?
Current funding structure?
Current funding structure of the technical college system in the state of Wisconsin. Also to pass that on and ask for that to be a resolution as part of the legislative agenda of the Wisconsin Counties Association.
And just to flesh that out, then I'm assuming that Corp Council would draft a suitable resolution that we could act on in our January meeting. Would that be correct or not?
It will. If the motion passes, I think I'll have some more questions for you, but.
Okay. Does everybody understand the question now? All right.
John probably did not hear our corporation counsel's answer.
Oh.
Because his mic was on.
Yeah.
I said, yes, I would draft you something if the motion passes. I'm gonna have some follow-up questions, and I guess kind of the scope of the project. Because there are different angles that you can approach from, or different issues or considerations that you can address in this. There's a lot of variance.
It's a pretty complex subject, and
It is.
we would want the most effective wording that we could think of to advance what we want to get done, which would be over my head. So any other discussion? Yes, we do. We have a, all right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carried. That's what we'll be doing then. Terry, that's our answer. I hope that you feel that we gave this some thoughtful consideration. I know it probably ain't what you wanted, but this is there.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, you certainly
Turn on your
can.
microphone, please.
Yeah, he's got.
Okay, this whole tech college funding thing is, when I looked into it, just recently, we had a West Central Wisconsin Regional Broadband Alliance meeting. And the way it ties in here is I went to Greg Quinn and I wanted some numbers. And between Dunn County and Barron County, we have over 6,000 members that are vets. And Eau Claire County itself has over 6,000. So being a veteran, a Vietnam veteran, I'm retired living on a fixed income. And I assume that the Korean vets and the majority of Vietnam veteran vets are in the same boat. So that's the military side of it. And the other side of it is, from all the data that I gave you, this unelected boards that have the ability to borrow millions every single year. It's just taxation without representation. If you looked at the 3-year facilities plan in my documentation, funding source, all these millions borrowed, funding source borrowed, that's not a representative democracy. And it's, if you get in the big picture, and 50 years ago was Vietnam. Yep. 50 years ago, we landed on the moon. Yep. Here 50 years later, we're sending something to the moon again. These antiquated funding statutes were created before the Vietnam War was over. Now, who's going to drive politicians to focus on? As far as I'm concerned, the legislative committee so far hasn't done much. I haven't seen much going on after. I'm already dogging into a bill that I testified at a hearing in 2013. And I think I have to thank Andrew for doing this for me. And I don't know if you have Wisconsin Policy Forum used to be the Wisconsin Taxpayer Alliance, had their Friday forum, and it's on Wisconsin Eye. And they had Assembly Speaker Voss, and they had a representative from Milwaukee. And Voss has already said he has no problems with referendums. He says if a county or a school district wants to have the referendum, that's fine. But what about my demographic? So that's all I got to say. And I did call the Wisconsin County Association and talk to one of their, I don't know what you call them.
Administrative assistants, maybe?
No, this was the guy that he would go around and he would actually portray the Wisconsin Counties Association. He was lobbyist.
There
He
you
was
go.
a
Yeah,
lobbyist.
yeah.
And he says, no, he says, I'm not gonna back on the county. He says, we'll give them information on what the laws are. But he says, we're not gonna do anything other than that. And going past history, back in 2012, the county did go to the Wisconsin County Association. And of course, nothing happened out of that. And I don't see the Counties Association doing anything now, but I may be wrong, but this was a lobbyist.
Well, thank you for your
Yeah,
comments.
so that's
Terry.
my comment.
Yeah, and I guess I brought this issue up at the Wisconsin County Association meeting, and the few people I talked to about it, there didn't seem to be any appetite for that. So I agree with what you're saying, Terry. So I guess our job is to change that appetite if we can possibly do that. I want to thank you for your efforts, and I want to thank the board. Next order of business is actions to the county board from the legislative committee resolution revising the 2023 legislative agenda, which I guess we just did on the item that we had before. And this is a new addition. And Chris, can you flesh us out on this?
Sure. So this is, came from that, well, and I guess I would defer first to, oh no, sorry, this came out of the ADRC Advisory Committee. Yes, okay. So this came up after you approved the 2023 legislative agenda. And it came up in response to, apparently there's a rising number of incidents across the state in which people who are volunteering to deliver meals in the senior nutrition program are being dropped by their insurance providers, because even though they receive only federal IRS mileage reimbursement, it's considered driving for profit. and they're losing their insurance coverage. So it's certainly has a potential to significantly impact people's willingness to do that. The other alternative is to purchase a more commercial type policy or a rider that covers you because you're doing something for profit, even though they're making no profit. And so this is a request to add that as to the legislative agenda to advocate for restricting the insurance companies from doing that.
They're essentially treating these volunteer drivers like Uber drivers or Lyft drivers. And that's something that was never there in the past, but is now. And that was brought to our attention, and I thought it was certainly worth pursuing this, because goodness sakes, it's hard to get volunteers in the first place. And you're just getting, you know, the reimbursement money. So I would entertain a motion to adopt this.
Mr. Chairman, I'd happily move approval of this modification of the legislative agenda.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Does everybody understand the issue? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign, motion carried. Next order of business is scheduled legislative agenda presentation. That would be with our legislators. Do you have any insight into that, County Manager Corporal?
So it has happened as early as the end of January, and last year it was closer to the end of February. So really, I don't know that there's a hard and a fast. I know that there was some feedback that someone had shared that some of the or at least a legislator, if not some of them, had said that it came too late for preparation of the input and sort of influencing of the state biennial budget. But honestly, it would have to happen in the summer of the year before in order for it to have that type of influence. The state biennial budget will likely come out in about April, but the drafting of that and the thoughts, the requests to the state departments like the Department of Health Services and Corrections and all of those different entities, those requests go in there. They've already submitted their requests by late fall at the early, at the latest, sometimes even earlier than that. So I think if we were attempting to influence the biennial budget, it would have to be much earlier, like a year earlier. And then if it were a matter of then influencing whatever was proposed in the biennial budget, then you may wish to go a little bit later. But I know that the sweet spot for the legislature was that they're not in session until early March-ish. And so if having them be local and being able to attend, getting the most likelihood of that happening would happen in either late January or in February.
If I might, yeah, it was Clint Moses who suggested that it is his experience that they have a great deal more flexibility to affect things like earmarks, for lack of a better word, if they get them sooner rather than later, ideally before the governor's introduction of the budget. So he was the one who suggested late January, early February.
Just to flesh that out too, I think what Chris was driving at is if we want to affect the budget, we want to get our ideas to the governor also along with the legislature, because he shapes whoever the governor is, he shapes the budget, and it's a biennial budget. So like she said, you want to get in there because it's a 2-year budget. And then the legislatures make whatever adjustments they're going to make to it. So if we really wanted to be as effective as we could be, I think we'd want to lobby to get our ideas to the governor and then to the legislature after that. Is that a fair representation, Chris?
I think that there's some truth to that. Yes.
Some truth.
Well, no,
she's a hard woman.
No, I just didn't want to, I don't want to dismiss what Chair McCullough said about the fact that if Representative Moses believed that there was some ability to influence what went into the governor's budget, that was on the table as well.
No, it was just an addition of information is all I was offering there. Okay, do we have a date that we'd like to set up at this point? I have no suggestions. Does anybody have a suggestion? Who's got a calendar close? Chris does probably.
Me too.
And I was just going to announce this in my, in our, executive committee meeting, but we have already scheduled a housing forum. The flyer will come to members shortly for January 31st. That's a Tuesday here.
So
gonna be gone?
your board meeting, the county, so the executive committee meeting in February would be on I gotta get off a calendar here. On the 15th, I believe. No, I'm sorry.
16th.
No, it's a week of the 8th.
Oh, the 8th, all right. yeah.
So the county board meeting will be the 15th in February. So if you wished to go, I think we typically have done a Monday evening, but I don't know that there's anything hard and fast about that. You could look at Monday evening, well, the Chippewa Valley Rally is already by February 22nd, and so that would allow me to believe that they're probably back in Madison by somewhere around that time in order to make that worthwhile for people to go and visit their legislators. So perhaps you wish to go earlier, Monday, February 6th.
That was what I was looking at our calendar, and
There are no other committee meetings. Committees that meet that week would just be highway and executive on Wednesday. Local emergency planning on Thursday. So it's a relatively quiet, usually that first week of the month is a pretty quiet meeting week.
Do I have that as a motion or
sure, I will make that a motion.
is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Have our legislative agenda presentation February 6th on a Monday. I would say what time? 7 would be the time. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
And can I just have confirmation of who the second was? Okay.
So we got our next meeting date will be February 8th. And that concludes our business. I adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming.
We got a 10-minute break before getting information.
Stop recording. Or pause.